The sea stretched before us, a vast expanse of shifting silver and ink, lanterns flickering like distant stars scattered across the dark canvas. I stood at the prow of my vessel, the wind tangling my dark braids, the salty spray kissing my sun-warmed skin. Around me, the gods ethereal and shimmering hovered close, their forms a delicate dance between light and shadow. Each flicker of their presence stirred the air with a magic both ancient and fragile, a power I had come to know as both a blessing and a burden. Ilan's voice rose above the whispering tides, carrying the cadence of a hymn older than any story I had ever heard. Her silver hair flowed like the sea itself, catching the gentle glow of the lanterns we carried, each one a beacon of hope against the encroaching dusk. She moved with effortless grace, her hands weaving patterns of light that shimmered across the water's surface, guiding us toward a place beyond the reach of known maps and mortal fears. Beside me, Kale stood watch, his figure tense but resolute. The scars along his forearms glistened faintly in the lantern light, each one a testament to battles fought, some with enemies seen, others with the ghosts of doubt and mistrust that had shadowed our journey. His eyes, sharp and vigilant, scanned the horizon, catching every ripple of movement that might threaten our fragile passage. Vela, ever the scholar, murmured translations and interpretations of the ancient runes Ilan had drawn upon the air. His weathered hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of history unfolding before us. The knowledge he carried was no longer confined to dusty scrolls or forgotten texts. It lived anew in the currents and lantern-lit skies around us. As the hours slipped by, the boundary between the mortal world and the divine blurred. The gods, once bound and imprisoned within a glowing core of ancient light, now moved freely among us, their presence both a comfort and a reminder of the delicate balance we sought to preserve. Their voices, when they spoke, were soft echoes, fragments of forgotten tales filled with longing and regret. We sailed beyond the edges of the mapped seas, into waters untouched by fear or suspicion. The stars above seemed to lean closer, their light mingling with the lanterns that floated beside us, creating a trail of luminescence that marked our passage. The air was thick with anticipation and melancholy, an acknowledgement that what we sought was both an ending and a beginning. Ilan's ritual reached its crescendo as she invoked the old powers, calling upon the tides and winds to carry us safely. The sea responded with a gentle luminescence, waves glowing faintly beneath the boat, weaving a path of light that promised sanctuary. It was a sacred moment, one that bound us irrevocably to the fate of the gods and the drifting islands alike. I felt the weight of my journey settle deep in my bones. From a simple fisherwoman whose life had been shaped by the steady rhythms of the sea, I had become a guide, a mediator between worlds. The gods had entrusted me with their freedom, and the islanders had entrusted me with their fears and hopes. It was a responsibility I bore with quiet pride and solemn resolve. As we neared the new resting place, the gods began to dissolve into radiant light, their forms merging with the drifting lantern islands. It was as if the very essence of their beings became part of the sea's endless dance, a delicate balance of light and shadow, hope and mystery. I watched, heart-heavy yet uplifted, as they faded into the night, both lost and found. Kale stepped forward beside me, his usual brashness softened by the gravity of the moment. "They re-home," he said quietly, eyes reflecting the lantern glow. "We've done what we came to do." Ilan nodded, her gaze steady. "The balance is restored, but it is fragile. We must remain vigilant." I looked out over the glowing waters, the drifting islands, and the countless lanterns that now symbolized more than just light in the darkness. They were beacons of understanding, courage, and the enduring mystery of our world. My journey was far from over, but in this moment, beneath the lantern-lit skies, I felt a quiet courage steady my soul. As the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, I knew the seas would continue to drift, and so would we, carrying forward the stories of light and shadow, loss and hope, forever intertwined beneath the glowing watch of the lantern seas. The dusk settled over the lantern's seas like a velvet shroud embroidered with flecks of molten gold and soft embers. From the deck of my small fishing boat, I watched the horizon blur where the drifting lantern islands rested, their gentle glow punctuating the darkening blue like distant stars fallen to the waves. Beside me, Cale moved with practiced steadiness, his hands sure as he lifted a delicate lantern from its cradle and struck a flint. A spark caught the wick, and the lantern blossomed to life, its light spilling over the creases of his tanned skin and the scars that mapped his past struggles. Together, we worked in quiet harmony, kindling the scattered lights one by one, our breaths mingling with the salt-tinged air, carrying the scent of the sea and the faint whisper of lantern oil. Each flame we lit was more than mere illumination. It was a beacon of hope, a fragile promise that light could flourish even amid shadows long cast. The lanterns, once symbols of isolation and mystery, had become emblems of unity, of a world learning to embrace the complexity of its own heart. I caught Cale's gaze, and for a moment, the usual roughness in his eyes softened. There was trust there now, forged in fire and tide, in the storms we weathered and the quiet moments between. Later, beneath the sprawling branches of the ancient lantern tree, at the heart of our island, Ilan sat serenely, her silver hair cascading like waves catching the waning light. The air around her hummed with the gentle cadence of twilight cicadas, their song threading through the space like a delicate thread binding past and present. Her voice, soft but unwavering, wove tales of old stories of gods and mortals, of exile and return, of balance and sacrifice. Each word carried the weight of generations, a melody of wisdom that settled deep within me. "Light and shadow are not enemies, Mira," she said, eyes reflecting the lantern glow. "They are dance partners, each defining the other. To tend the lanterns is to honor both the brilliance and the darkness that shapes our world." Her words resonated in my chest like the steady beat of a drum, grounding me even as the seas around us drifted and shifted unpredictably. I reached out, touching one of the lanterns hanging low from the tree's limbs, feeling the warmth pulse faintly beneath my fingertips, as if the light itself was alive and breathing. Not far from there, Thala sat hunched over a large, weathered tome, the parchment worn but sturdy. His focused eyes traced each curve of the inked letters as he chronicled the transformed history of the lantern seas, a narrative rewritten not by conquest or exile, but by understanding and resilience. The soft flicker of lantern light illuminated his weathered hands and thoughtful expression, while the gentle lap of the waves against the wooden pier provided a rhythmic backdrop. The air carried the mingled scents of salt and blooming night flowers, creating a cocoon of quiet dedication around him. "The story must be told," Thela murmured one evening, glancing up briefly, "so that those who come after us will know the cost of light and darkness, and the courage it takes to hold the balance." His words stirred a deep resolve within me. I knew that my journey was far from over. The seas would continue to drift, the tides to shift, and with them, new challenges would arise. But here, beneath the lantern-lit skies, surrounded by allies who had become family, I found a quiet courage, a strength not born of certainty, but of hope and steadfastness in the face of the unknown. On the shore, as the night deepened, I stood alone for a moment, gazing out at the scattered lantern islands glowing softly like embers adrift upon the dark waters. The sea breeze carried the mingled scents of brine and lantern oil, and the cool touch of the salt air brushed against my skin. The light pulsing gently across the waves seemed to beat in rhythm with my own heart, a steady reminder that even in drifting darkness, light could be found and nurtured. My thoughts drifted to the gods we had freed, the ancient powers now resting beyond the horizon, and to Daegis, whose shadow still lingered in the corners of our world. The balance we tended was fragile, a delicate dance that required constant vigilance and care. Yet, I no longer felt alone in this endeavor. Cal's loyalty, Ilan's wisdom, Thela's knowledge each was a lantern in their own right, their light weaving together to form a tapestry of resilience. As I lit another lantern and watched its glow mingle with the others, I felt the weight of my role settle comfortably on my shoulders, not as a burden, but as a beacon. The lantern seas would continue to drift, their mysteries and dangers intertwined with beauty and hope. And I would be here, tending the light and shadow alike, a guardian of the fragile harmony we had fought so hard to reclaim. The night was deep, the stars hidden behind wisps of drifting clouds, but the lanterns burned steady and true. Their light was a quiet song, a lullaby for the seas and the souls who called them home. And as I stood beneath the lantern-lit skies, I knew that this was only the beginning of a new story, one of courage, balance, and the endless dance between light and darkness. The seas whispered around me, and I listened, ready to face whatever tides the future might bring. The air hung thick with salt and a gentle coolness that only the sea at dusk could carry, a liminal moment suspended between day and night, light and shadow. I stood at the edge of my island, the familiar curve of the shore beneath my feet softened by the tender embrace of drifting sands. The lanterns began to glow, their flickering flames casting warm halos that danced upon the rippling water. It was a sight both timeless and ever new. The lantern islands around me drifting slowly with the tide's silent sentinels of light in the vast ocean, each one a story, a heartbeat, a promise. The sky held its breath as the sun slipped below the horizon, bleeding gold into hues of rose and lavender, then deepening to the indigo of approaching night. Above, the first stars pricked the velvet canopy, their reflections shimmering on the sea's surface. The lanterns and stars merged into an endless constellation, a celestial dance mirrored in the water's quiet sway. I reached out instinctively, as if to touch that glimmering thread connecting heavens and seas, past and present. Around me, the village stirred softly to life beneath the growing glow. Islanders emerged from their homes, drawn like moths to the lanterns that now symbolized more than mere light. They were beacons of our resilience, our history, and our hope. Children darted between the glowing orbs, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the gentle splash of waves against wooden piers. Elders gathered in low circles, voices hushed but rich with stories that wove the tapestry of our shared existence. They spoke of gods and mortals, of darkness and light, of exile and return. Cal stood nearby, his usual brashness softened by the serenity that settled over the island. His gaze, steady and watchful, followed the lanterns as they swayed gently in the breeze. "You've changed things," he said quietly when I approached, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken understanding. "Not just the islands, but us." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words deepen within me. Change was the undercurrent beneath everything: the gods' return, the storms weathered, the fragile peace we now held. It was a balance precarious and delicate, like the lantern flames themselves, flickering in the ever-shifting winds. Elin joined us, her silver hair catching the lantern light like threads of moonlight. Her eyes, calm and deep as the ocean, rested on the horizon. "The seas will always drift," she said, her voice a soothing balm. "So must we. Our beliefs, our fears, our hopes, they are as transient as the tides. But it is in our acceptance of that impermanence that true strength lies." Her words echoed in my heart, a quiet affirmation of the journey I had undertaken. I thought of the gods beneath the waves, their presence a steady pulse, a hidden current beneath the world's surface. Though they no longer ruled the seas with iron will, their essence lingered, an enduring light in the drifting dark. Later, as night deepened, I found myself alone on the shore. The lanterns floated in gentle clusters, their light weaving a path across the water like a river of stars. I knelt, tracing the frame of a lantern I had tended since the gods' release. The flame flickered softly, and beneath its glow, I felt that steady heartbeat, the silent song of the gods, a reminder that even in absence, there is presence. Even in darkness, light persists. The sea's quiet song rose around me, a melody woven from the threads of my journey, fear and courage. loss and hope, solitude and connection. Each note carried the weight of ancient secrets and the fragile promise of tomorrow. I breathed it in deeply, letting the bittersweet harmony settle into my bones. As the night stretched on, I knew this was not an end, but a beginning. The lantern seas would continue to drift, shifting with tides and time, their stories folding into one another like the ever-moving waves. And I, once a simple fisherwoman, had become their guardian, their reluctant guide, a keeper of light and shadow. The lanterns would burn on, each flicker a testament to the courage found in quiet moments, the strength born from acceptance, and the enduring mystery of the seas beneath lantern-lit skies. And as I lifted my gaze to the drifting horizon, the sea's quiet song whispered a promise. The journey was far from over, and the light, no matter how faint, would never truly fade. The ocean held its breath, and so did I, ready to face whatever tides awaited beyond the drifting horizon. The evening settled like a velvet cloak over the lantern seas, the drifting islands glowing softly as if breathing with the pulse of the tides themselves. Mira found herself drawn once again to the water's edge, where the sea whispered secrets only she seemed able to hear. The surface shimmered with a faint, otherworldly glow, bioluminescent creatures weaving trails of light beneath the waves, casting a surreal illumination that danced over the rocks and sand. She knelt, dipping her fingers into the cool water, and the ocean's pulse seemed to synchronize with her own heartbeat. Closing her eyes, Mira allowed the visions to come. They rose like rippling currents in her mind, ancient tides flowing back through time, carrying images of submerged gods, their forms shifting between light and shadow, locked in eternal cycles beneath the waves. She saw the silhouettes of great sea serpents coiling among coral cathedrals and vast underwater lanterns pulsing with forgotten energy. The visions were fragmented yet vivid, a tapestry woven from whispers of the past and warnings of the future. A breath of wind ruffled her dark braids as she opened her eyes, the twilight sky deepening into a canvas of stars. The weight of the knowledge pressed gently upon her soul. The secrets beneath the waves were not merely memories, but a living legacy shaping the tides of time. These echoes were a call to prepare, to protect the delicate balance that held the lantern seas in harmony. Later, within the warmly lit confines of Ellen's hut, the air thickened with the scent of salt and burning herbs. Lanterns hung from wooden beams, their flickering light casting elongated shadows that danced on walls lined with ancient scrolls and weathered charts. Ellen's silver hair caught the light like woven strands of moonlight as she regarded Mira with serene, deep eyes. "You carry the weight of what lies beneath," Ellen said softly, her voice a soothing balm. "The sea does not forget, nor does it forgive. The cycles of light and darkness are eternal. To know them is both a blessing and a burden." Mira nodded, her gaze steady despite the storm of thoughts within. These visions, they show more than just the past. They speak of change, of challenges yet to come. How do we prepare for something so vast, so unknowable? Ellen's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. By remembering that we are part of the sea's rhythm, Mira. Guardians, not masters. The balance is fragile, but with each lantern lit, each story told, we weave a tapestry strong enough to hold the tides at bay. The following day, aboard a drifting lantern island, Della spread ancient maps and scrolls across a wooden table worn smooth by time and tide. The flickering lantern light cast dancing shadows on his pale skin and ink-stained fingers as he traced shifting currents and hidden ley lines with careful precision. Beside him, Cale's tanned face was drawn with concentration, scars catching the glow as his eyes followed the scholar's gestures. "These currents," Thaler explained, "are not just water moving. They are veins of magic, remnants of the gods' power still flowing beneath us. If we understand their patterns, we might predict the shifts in tide and power, the moments when light falters and darkness rises." Cale frowned, skepticism shadowing his features. "And you think this knowledge will stop what's coming?" "Not stop," Della replied, "but guide us." help us navigate the unknown, Mira felt a surge of cautious optimism. The maps were more than ink on parchment, they were keys to survival, tools to protect the fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve. As night deepened, Mira stood at the prow of her boat, the sea calm beneath a star-studded sky. The lanterns on nearby islands glowed softly, their warm light a beacon in the drifting dark. The waves whispered around her, alive with ancient magic and quiet promise. She breathed in the salty air, feeling the steady pulse of the tides beneath her feet, and the weight of the journey still ahead. In that moment, the bittersweet mix of awe and apprehension settled over her. The legacy of the gods, the dance of light and darkness, the fragile balance of the lantern seas, all these were threads woven into the fabric of her life. And though the path was uncertain, Mira knew she would carry the light forward, a quiet beacon amid the drifting dark. The future stretched before her like the endless ocean, vast, mysterious, and full of possibility. And with each lantern lit against the night, hope endured. But beneath the waves, the echoes whispered still, promising that the story of the lantern seas was far from over. The morning air was cool and tinged with the salt of the sea as I stood at the prow of my small boat. The lantern islands flickering faintly behind me like scattered stars reluctant to fade. Dawn spilled across the horizon in delicate brushstrokes of golden rose, soft light kissing the waves into gentle ripples that whispered beneath my feet. The vastness of the lantern seas stretched endlessly before me, a drifting tapestry of light and shadow, of mysteries I had come to know and others still hidden beneath the surface. My heart was steady, tempered by the quiet courage that only the sea and time could teach. I had once feared the unknown, the ancient gods whose light and darkness intertwined with the tides and lanterns. Yet now, as the first breath of wind filled my sails, I embraced it all, the weight and wonder, the drifting balance of life itself. This voyage was not just a journey across the endless ocean, but a passage into the future I had claimed as my own. Behind me, the islands murmured softly, their lanterns glowing with a gentle pulse that carried the memory of those who lived and died beneath their light. Kale had come to see me off, his presence a steady anchor in the shifting currents of my thoughts. We exchanged a solemn nod, words unnecessary between us, now trust forged in storms and silence, in battles fought and peace sought. "Safe travels, Mira," he said, his voice low but sure. "The seas are wide, but your light will guide you." I smiled, feeling the warmth of his faith like a lantern lit within my chest. "And yours will light the islands while I'm gone." Ilen's wisdom lingered in my mind, her silver hair like the very waves themselves, her calm eyes reflecting the endless dance of tides. She had reminded me that the balance I guarded was fragile, ever shifting between light and shadow, hope and despair. And Thala, with his careful study and gentle words, had chronicled the stories that now sailed with me. Stories of gods and mortals intertwined like the drifting lanterns themselves. As the wind caught fuller, my boat surged forward, skimming over the water with a grace I had come to trust. The sounds of the sea embraced me, the soft slap of waves against wood, the distant cries of seabirds riding the currents. The whisper of the lantern light carried on the breeze. Each moment was a thread in the tapestry of this voyage, each breath a step deeper into the unknown. Night would come soon, and with it the deep blue cloak of stars and lanterns scattered like scattered dreams. I would navigate by their glow, a beacon in the drifting dark, carrying the fragile hope of the seas with me. Whatever lay beyond the horizon, I was ready to meet it, not as a fisherwoman afraid of shadows, but as a guardian of light and darkness intertwined. The lantern seas had changed me. They had shown me that courage was not the absence of fear, but the resolve to move forward despite it. And as my boat drifted into the endless ocean, I felt the pulse of the ancient tides beneath me, steady and sure, a reminder that life itself was a delicate balance, ever drifting, ever glowing, ever becoming. I was no longer just a girl from a small island. I was the keeper of that balance, the bearer of light in the ever-shifting dark. And as the horizon beckoned, I sailed on into the mystery, into the future, into the drifting light. The sun had long dipped beneath the horizon when I finally found myself alone on the deck of my boat. The familiar creak of wood beneath my fingers grounding me in the present. Above, the twilight sky stretched wide and infinite, scattered with the soft glow of lantern islands drifting gently like ancient stars caught in a slow, endless dance. The sea around me was calm, whispering secrets in the language of tides and distant waves. I breathed deeply, the salt air filling my lungs, and let the quiet settle into my bones. For so long, the lantern seas had been my world, a realm of shifting light and shadow, of drifting islands that carried the weight of legends and gods alike. It was a place where the impossible felt tangible, where the delicate balance between the known and the unknown was held in the flicker of lantern flames and the pull of magical tides. I thought back to the moment I first saw that eerie, ancient light glowing beyond the horizon, an island unlike any other, a place where imprisoned gods whispered their forgotten histories and pleaded for guidance. Fear had gripped me then, a cold knot tightening in my chest. Yet curiosity, that stubborn ember, had drawn me closer, unraveling the threads of my simple fisherwoman's life and weaving them into something far greater. The journey had been arduous, not just across the seas, but within myself. I had struggled with doubt and mistrust, the suspicion of my islanders weighing heavily on my shoulders. Cal's brash loyalty and fierce protectiveness often clashed with my cautious empathy, yet through our conflicts, we found a fragile harmony. Ilan's serene wisdom was a beacon, a reminder of the ancient balance I was now sworn to uphold. Thela's scholarly insights gave voice to the arcane rhythms that pulsed beneath the waves. Each step had brought me closer to understanding the complex dance of light and darkness that governed our world. The gods were not simply divine beings to be revered or feared. They were fractured, layered with histories of betrayal and longing, their powers a double-edged tide that could both nurture and destroy. Tonight, as the lanterns flickered softly in the distance, I felt the weight of all those stories settle into a quiet resolve. I had become more than a fisherwoman. I was a guardian of balance, a reluctant guide who had come to embrace her role with fierce determination and newfound hope. Back on my home island, the circle of lanterns we'd gathered around cast warm, dancing shadows on our faces. Cale's scarred hands reached out to steady a lantern's flame, his eyes reflecting a mix of skepticism and trust. Ilan's silver hair shimmered like the sea itself, her calm gaze steady and deep as she spoke of cycles and continuities, of light that must dance with darkness to endure. Thela, ever the quiet scholar, recorded our words and moments, weaving them into the fabric of history that would outlast us all. We spoke of loss, the gods we had freed, the battles waged, the storms weathered. We spoke of hope, the fragile peace that now graced the seas, the bridges we had built between worlds old and new. And we spoke of the future uncertain, drifting like the lanterns themselves, but glowing with possibility. The shoreline beckoned me next, the sand cool beneath my bare feet as I walked beneath the vast canopy of glowing islands. Each lantern pulsed gently, like the heartbeat of the sea itself, a reminder that life and belief were ever shifting, impermanent yet eternal. The salty breeze carried the whispers of ancient tides, stories told and retold with each passing wave. In that moment, I understood that my story was but one lantern in the drifting dark, a single flame to illuminate the path for those who would come after. With careful hands, I lit a lantern of my own and released it into the night sky. It rose slowly, joining the constellation of glowing orbs that floated toward the horizon, a symbol of enduring courage and quiet resilience. As the lanterns drifted upward, the sea reflected the starry sky, blurring the line between water and air, light and darkness. I stood there, heart steady, knowing that the balance we had fought to preserve was both delicate and unbreakable. The lantern seas would continue to glow, their mysteries deepening with every tide. And beneath those lantern-lit skies, Mira, the fisherwoman turned guardian, would carry the light forward, a quiet beacon in the drifting dark. But the seas are vast, and their stories never truly end. As my lantern faded into the distance, I felt the pull of the unknown once more, a call to new horizons, new challenges, and new stories yet to be told. And so, with the drifting light as my guide, I set my course toward the endless horizon, ready to face whatever the lantern's seas might bring. The night held its breath, the lanterns flickered one last time, and the journey, ours and theirs, continued beneath lantern-lit skies.